Hello and welcome to Theology-ish. I am one of your hosts, William Barry. Today, we have a special episode for you. It is part one of a three-part extended discussion on the problem of evil. Now, because we are going to be talking about the problem of evil, the subject matter is going to be intense, mature at times, so if there are little ears listening, or it's just something that you find particularly troubling, you probably should proceed with caution. Viewer discretion is advised, and so on and so forth. In addition, as always, the conversations that we are going to be having do not necessarily define our personal stances, nor are we necessarily representing the doctrine of our affiliated churches. We are having conversation for conversation's sake, to hopefully spur curiosity and to help you think through some things. Hope you enjoy this. Without further ado.
Yeah, we can do the life update thing.
I mean, people care?
I care, William.
Oh, okay. That's nice of you.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm admittedly a little frustrated.
Tell us why you're frustrated, Ryan.
I think you're probably equally, if not more, frustrated than me. Yeah, there was an oopsie. There was a big oopsie.
I was about to make a joke, but then I decided not to.
Good for you for having
I was gonna ask.
restraint.
I was gonna ask if you were pregnant, but
Yes, I am pregnant.
yes. Oopsie. No, that's not.
Yeah,
Case.
unfortunately, by we, I mean I, by I mean my computer, lost 3 hours worth of recordings.
More than that, because it was the special intros and outros that we also did, so it was probably like 3 hours and 15 minutes worth of work.
Yeah, lost to the void. I don't know why. I couldn't figure it out. So here we are, re-recording this big episode.
Yep. And unfortunately, it's not a happy episode. Not a fun topic, a necessary topic that I'm glad we have the opportunity to do, but not a fun one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, fun thing that came out of that, though, is I got to buy a raid system, so that's kind of cool.
For those who are not computerly adept, what's a raid system?
All right, I'm going to attempt to explain this and not sound dumb.
Explain it in the dumbest terms possible so that some people, not me, but some people who don't understand these things can follow along.
I think I know this sort of okay. Jesse knows how this works far better than I do. So, imagine, William, you have 2 hard drives. And,
Done.
those hard drives, yeah, they can store things on them.
Yes.
All right?
Ones and zeros.
Yeah, ones and zeros.
Okay.
Now, imagine we stuck those 2 hard drives into a case and had it set up in such a way where you wanted to store a file, ones and zeros, you wanted to put a thing on that hard drive, one of those hard drives.
Okay.
What it instead does is it copies that file onto both hard drives at the same time. That's what we would call redundant.
Okay.
It's a redundant system.
Yes.
A RAID system can be comprised of any number of hard drives.
Okay.
It could be 3, it could be 1,000.
Okay.
I got 2 hard drives, which is the bare minimum.
Okay.
So what that means is, when I stick our episode's audio files into this system, it's going to copy that episode onto each of these hard drives individually. What that essentially means is, if one of the hard drives fails, the other one is still functioning and we didn't lose anything.
Plus, we'll have the digital copies that we've been... I mean, they're all digital.
They're all
copies,
digital,
but the one that's like housed on your computer.
Yes, so that means we'll have 3 copies of every episode at any given time. So if any one of them fails, we still have 2 copies sitting around to use. If 2 of them fail, we still have a copy.
And if we ever, for any reason, lose an episode again, with those redundancies in place, I quit. And we'll just never do a podcast again.
Yeah.
So that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, I'm a little sad that we have to re-record this because that's just unfortunate for us. But
yeah, it does give us a little longer to do some research for what was going to be recorded.
Yeah,
now.
So there's that, and I got to buy some computer equipment, which is fun, I guess. So that's kind of neat.
You're a nerd.
Yeah, but yeah. So otherwise, I'm doing pretty good.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
What's new in your life, William?
Started school back.
You did.
Doing college again.
Yeah.
So that's exciting.
How's is it just the one class you're taking right now?
Yeah, just one class because I'm still working.
Yeah, how's that going?
It's going fine.
What class is it?
It is Systematic Theology 1.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that. It's good. It's good. It's going good. The past 2 assignments that I've had to do that I've received grades for, I got perfect grades on them. So
look at that.
That's nice. Yeah, just trucking along.
I hear you'll have to write a paper about blessed John Calvin this semester.
I don't know if blessed is the right title for Calvin. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do a analysis of a section from Calvin's writings, which fine.
Yeah,
it's not like I'm writing laudatory poetry about the merits of Calvinism. It's an analysis of like one paragraph, and to see if his argument is any good. So there you go. That's something coming down the pipe.
Yeah.
So welcome to this, where one of us is in the process of becoming qualified to talk about the things we're going to talk about.
You're so close.
Not really, but I'm closer now than I used to be.
And you're closer now than I'll probably ever be.
Unless you decide to just go for it, man. Might as well.
I've thought about going back to school and getting like an associate's degree in theology and or biblical studies and doing that. Just do like a 1 or 2 year program and get my associates, but I don't know if I can justify A, spending the money to do that, and B, spending the time to do that when I'm working a full-time job, volunteering at my church, and also I'm almost certainly never going to use that associate's degree for anything helpful in my life.
I don't even know if you can get an associate's degree in theology, TBH.
You can. I did look into
it. You can. You shouldn't. If you're going to do it, you really need to go for the bachelor's.
Yeah, and I'm not doing a 4-year program. I can't do it.
Yeah. I think you could probably hack it with the online one. It's the workload is very different.
Yeah.
Than the in-person, because that's what I'm doing right now is the online classes.
If I really wanted to do it, I'm sure I'm capable.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think I can justify the time and the money necessary to do that when I know at the end of the day, I'm never going to use a theology degree for anything actually useful in my life.
I guess it depends on why you do it. I think that a lot of people have a view of higher education as a means to an end, and the end is better economic outputs for yourself. I don't think that that's necessarily what higher education is for. I think sometimes it's just because you want to better yourself and to embiggen your mind and know things that you didn't used to know.
Which would be why I do it.
Yeah, but if you're doing it for your own purposes and just to do it because you want to, then there are no downsides as long as you don't go into debt for it. It's totally cool.
It's college. You almost certainly will go into debt for it.
The online program's very affordable.
Hmm.
So,
And if you're real thinky, you might get a scholarship.
yeah.
I'm not
Maybe
real
so.
thinky, sadly.
Yeah, I'm not any kind of minority, so
Yeah, so
I
I don't know.
get scholarships.
Maybe one day I'll change my mind, but right now I just can't justify the financial burden and the time stress to do that
Fair.
for myself. So maybe one day. We'll see how life pans out.
Anyway, you want to get into this?
Yeah.
All right. So,
Yeah.
as you know from the title of the episode and little introduction, we're going to be talking about the problem of evil, which is a big topic, and unfortunately, not one that we are really equipped to deal with, and being Ryan and myself, because I'm a truck driver, and Ryan is an exterminator.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not academics, we're not philosophers, we are enthusiasts and amateurs. So we are going to enthusiastically and amateurly try and tackle this thing for our own purposes, to embiggen our brains and hopefully be informative to you and hopefully be helpful to you. But again, we're not experts, so we don't know what we're talking about.
Maybe this will help me be more thinky, William.
Maybe so. Maybe so. So before we get into this, let us establish what the problem of evil is.
Please do.
Oh, I was hoping you would.
Oh, I can do that.
Yeah. What is the problem of evil?
Okay. The problem of evil goes something along these lines. There is God. God creates. God's creation turns their back on God. God's creation starts doing evil things. Evil happens. People do the bad things. There's pain. There's suffering. Oof, ouch, I don't like the pain. And oh no, now there's also natural evils like earthquakes and hurricanes. And oh no, bad, oof, ouch, I don't like these. If God exists and if God good, why bad thing happen?
Something along those lines, yeah.
Something along those lines.
Evil exists. Can God prevent evil? If the answer is yes, then we move along. If the answer is no, then God is not omnipotent. And that's a problem for the thing we're calling God.
Mm-hmm.
So if God can prevent evil, well, does God know about evil? If the answer is no, then God is not omniscient, which is a problem for the thing that we call God. If he can prevent evil and he knows about evil, does God want to prevent evil? If the answer is no, then God is not good, which is a problem for the thing we call God. If he can prevent it, knows about it, and wants to prevent it, why do we have evil? What's the deal?
Mm-hmm.
So if God is all-knowing, all-powerful, and all good, then we shouldn't have evil. But we do. So what's the deal with that? And what you were kind of alluding to there is that we actually have two categories of evil that we can talk about. The first is natural evils. That's things like hurricanes, flies that lay maggots in the eyeballs of sleeping children, lions and sharks, cancer. These kinds of things are natural evils. And then we have moral evils, which are specific, willful actions of people intended to do evil things. You know what moral evils are. I don't have to explain it to you. You've watched the news before. Pedophiles exist. That's a moral evil. Murder exists. Moral evil. Politicians exist.
Moral evil.
Etc. So we've got these two categories of evil that we can talk about. And Christian theologians, whenever they talk about the problem of evil, tend to make that distinction. Non-Christian folk don't usually make the distinction between natural and moral evils. So we end up getting a bit of a breakdown where a Christian theologian will be talking specifically to natural evils, and then a non-Christian will say, well, what about bad people? Huh? Or vice versa. So that it's a thing that happens. So we got natural evil, we got moral evil, and responses to the problem of evil are technically called theodicies. So today what we're going to be doing is engaging with a couple different theodicies and talking about those and seeing if they're any good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll also be engaging with critiques of the theodicies that we're going to engage with, because just because a Christian philosopher that's on our team said something doesn't necessarily mean that it's right.
If only it were so simple.
Yeah. You ready to get into this?
I am ready.
All right. The year is 16-something.
It's 2024, William.
Well, we're going in a time machine.
Oh, cool.
Skynet is going to send us back in time. It's powered by ChatGPT. And it sends us back in time to 16-something. I don't remember exactly when. And there's this guy who's probably autistic, and his name is Gottfried Leibniz. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. I don't know how to speak 16th century German, or 17th century German, the 1600s. I think he's German. He might have been like Prussian or one of those countries that doesn't exist anymore. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. You can Google it. Leibniz.
Yeah.
Leibniz is big-brained. Giga Chad.
Dirt-pilled.
Well, I wouldn't say he's dirt-pilled.
Oh, okay.
He's big-brained. And he is so big-brained that he invents calculus like the same year that Isaac Newton invents calculus. So Newton's over in England doing his thing, and Leibniz is in continental Europe doing his thing. And they both invent calculus, and there's a debate about who invented it first and who stole from who. I think they were just both very, very smart gentlemen who came up with the same idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Leibniz is also something of a philosopher as well as a mathematician.
As many smart people back then seem to have been.
Yeah. I mean,
Kind of seems academics and philosophy were sort of just a thing that went hand in hand.
yeah, for sure. And probably should be now. Just throwing that out there.
Perhaps.
If the people who were studying science also had to spend some time with some philosophy, we'd probably have less weird science going on. Anyway, Leibniz is thinking about the problem of evil. And he has a thought process that I don't have it in front of me, and I haven't read it in a long time, so bear with me. But his idea runs something like this. God doesn't do anything for no reason. God is perfectly rational, because God is everything that it is better to be than to not be. And everything that he is completely.
Yeah.
It's better to be rational than irrational, so God is perfectly rational in the highest degree of rationality. It's better to be wise than unwise, so God is perfectly wise to the highest degree of wisdom.
Yep.
Right? God is perfectly powerful, because it is better to have power than to not have power. And so Leibniz goes through all of these things, and he considers that God is also free. He's perfectly free. So he could have created the world freely in a different way than he did.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't. He created it this way. So if God is perfectly rational and perfectly wise, and he's not acting arbitrarily, then he created the world this way for reasons.
Yeah.
And God being perfectly rational and perfectly wise, his reasons would be perfectly rational and perfectly wise reasons.
Yeah.
So out of all the possible worlds that could have been made, this must be the best possible world that could have been made.
Mm.
Leibniz goes on and he will say that what makes this the best possible world is that it has the most variety of phenomenon with the fewest amount of governing principles possible. So we've got like the laws of thermodynamics.
Yep.
And we've got weak and powerful nuclear energy, gravity, and magnetism.
Uh-huh.
Leibniz wouldn't have lined those out like that, but we've got these few governing principles, and everything that happens is beholden to these very few governing principles, the laws of conservation of matter and the laws of motion and these kinds of things. And we get all the phenomena that we see, which is extreme and varied and multifarious, so much going on in the natural world, and it's governed by very few governing principles. And that makes this the best of all possible worlds. For Leibniz, this is a response to natural evil.
Mm-hmm.
He does not think that his response is a response to moral evils necessarily. He says
gravity exists and therefore murder.
Yeah, he's like, well, gravity exists and it's good that gravity exists. Ain't that a real good thing?
Uh-huh.
Also, murder exists, but that doesn't have anything to do with gravity. And the way that Leibniz puts it is that a miserable life may end in misery. He's not concerned with human persons and their moral struggles. He's concerned with the completeness of all of creation working together in harmony, in doing so with not a whole lot of natural laws in place. And that is what makes this the best of all possible worlds, according to Leibniz. I yield the floor to you. Thoughts on that? If you have any. If not, we can launch into Voltaire and I can poop on him for the next 15 minutes.
I know you can. We've done this before.
Yeah. I forgot to set a timer. How long have we been talking?
I mean, we've got a timer on the computer. It's cool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you see all them numbers at the bottom?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it keeps track on
Not
them.
really. I don't have...
They're there. It
Classes.
keeps track on there.
Okay.
Anyway.
Well, how much time do we have left to talk about Leibniz and the best of all possible
We're
worlds?
at 22 minutes right now.
22 minutes? Okay, we got like 38 minutes to talk about this.
Yeah, we've
Great.
got all the time.
Yield the floor.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Leibniz.
So I think Leibniz is on to something. However, I would approach it differently than him.
How would you approach it?
No,
Did you invent calculus?
and I was just about to
Okay,
say,
well-
let me preface this with, I didn't invent calculus, and I wasn't giga smart. I'm not real thinky like he was, as we've established. This must be the best possible of all worlds. Leibniz's argument is because the ratio of governing laws to phenomena is the most, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it's the least amount of governing laws for the most amount of phenomena. I am going to take a different approach while you go wipe the coffee off of yourself. Perhaps this is the best of all possible worlds. but not because of the governing laws in place or the amount of phenomena that those allow for. Just perhaps, William, this is the best of all possible worlds, simply because it's the one God made. Which, I want to be clear, isn't going to convince any non-Christians that that's correct or that that's a good argument. But for those of us that are Christian and do believe in God, I think maybe that's sufficient for some of us, and I think maybe that's sufficient for me.
Okay. I'm going to respond to that.
Yeah.
But first, I'm going to... Not terribly long ago, we were recording an episode, and I had like a canned iced coffee drink, and I missed my mouth hole with it.
You did.
Poured coffee down my face, and I had to get up mid-recording to wipe it off. I just did that again, and I just got back to my seat.
You need to drink not canned coffee.
I have a mug, a travel mug, regular coffee next to the canned coffee. But I got the canned coffee because it has 20 grams of protein in it.
Ooh.
And I need the protein because otherwise I'm just eating empty carbs for breakfast with the muffins. I got to get them gains, bro.
Yeah. Anyway. Good job, William.
So there's a debate within philosophy of religion and theology about whether or not God is aware of how things could be compared to how things are. And hear me out. God's wisdom is perfect, right?
Yeah.
Does perfect wisdom that lacks nothing, it's not missing any data, doesn't need to deliberate.
No.
If it doesn't need to deliberate, it's not lacking any information. Does God know what other worlds he could have made? Was there ever a period where he was like, I think I might do it? Like, no. It's just all at once. Because perfect wisdom, perfect rationality, not lacking any information or power, doesn't need to deliberate with itself. So the fact that this is the world that God creates, ipso facto, to use a Latin lawyer term that I don't actually know the meaning of, but it sounds fancy. Ipso facto. This must be the best world because it is the one that God created, and it's the only one that God would have or could have created, question mark on that. Therefore, it's the best one. So, Leibniz wants to maintain God's freedom to maybe pick something else if he wanted, but I don't think God needs that freedom. I don't think. Maybe. I don't know.
Let me think out loud here, if I may.
You may. You have my permission.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm generous like that.
Yes. Jesus Christ,
Yes.
Son of Man,
Uh-huh.
makes the claim himself, the Father and I are one. There's no question for those of us who have half a brain that Jesus Christ is God. And yet, within Scripture, we find Jesus Christ praying to the Father, and we see him praying, correct me if I'm wrong, because I might be wrong, but I'm thinking out loud here. If I'm not mistaken, we see him pray for wisdom to the Father. We see him pray for the right decision-making. We go as far as just before he was betrayed, him praying, if it is your will, let this cup pass from me. But if Christ and the Father are one, then Christ would know there is no other way. The cup cannot be passed from him, and yet he prays that anyway.
So this is not exactly relevant to the problem of evil, but we're going to go down this rabbit hole.
Well, yeah, because
anyway,
what I'm getting at is if Jesus is God, and Jesus himself seems to be not necessarily debating, but talking with his multi-person self about what the right move is, does that potentially imply maybe perfect wisdom does not imply you're always going to just make the right thing? Perhaps there is still a decision-making process involved in that.
What this brings us into is the corner of theology that's interested in the incarnation. Specifically, the mystery of the hypostatic union.
Yeah.
Where we have true God of true God, begotten, not made, light, from all eternity into all eternity, God becomes inmeated in the person of Jesus Christ. And while that incarnation does not rob God of any of the divinity, in the words of Paul, he puts on flesh, and part of the putting on of flesh is human limitation, right? Jesus Christ is, we would all affirm, as good faithful Christians, that God is omnipresent.
Yeah.
But Jesus Christ could not be omnipresent because he had meat.
Yeah.
Part of becoming human was limitations to the expression of his divinity. And that would extend to his omniscience, where he tells us that no one knows the day or the hour except the Father who is in heaven. You tracking?
I'm tracking.
So what we see in Jesus Christ seeming to be unsure or apprehensive about the next thing to do, I don't think that is a demonstration of a lack of perfect wisdom and perfect rationality in God. I think that it is a demonstration of the limitations that God put on to be incarnate. Part of being a human is to not have perfect rationality. So for the duration of the incarnation, God set aside, he empties himself of glory, as Paul puts it. I know that's a lot.
Yeah.
So this is the Chalcedonian, the Council of Chalcedon, I think, and I want to say 681. That's off the dome, so I might be mistaken. That's part of what that council was called about. And modern theologians and people in the church will often poo-poo on the Council of Chalcedon as being really technical and not that important, because we had some people who said that Jesus Christ was one kind of thing, and that was the monophysites. They said that his humanity and divinity it's like if you have a piece of blue Play-Doh and a piece of red Play-Doh and you mix it together until it's purple. They were like, it's one thing. And then there was the other party that said, no, it's like a blue Play-Doh and a red Play-Doh that are equally there, but maintain the fullness of each without confusion or mixture. And that's the position that was ultimately determined to be orthodox. In part because, as Irenaeus tells us, our good friend, what is not assumed is not healed. So Jesus Christ must assume the entirety of the human experience, which includes a human will and human understanding and human meat, but that also has to be conjoined with divinity, without the divinity being compromised. So Jesus Christ has both a human and a divine nature, and he has them both equally without mixture. And that's the not immediately relevant to the problem of evil, but that's what you see. Does that make sense? I know that's a lot. And kind of technical. But.
Yeah. I'm tracking. Barely.
Anyway,
On track.
back to God has perfect wisdom and perfect rationality, right?
Yeah.
Like, if he doesn't, you would have to demonstrate why not beyond Jesus, who is human and going to have human limitations.
Which is why I was bringing that up.
Yeah, beyond that, beyond Jesus' human limitations that do not detract from his divinity, how does God not have perfect wisdom or perfect rationality?
Well, William, may I propose you the problem of
I'm already married. Oh, different proposal. Okay, all right.
if God good, why bad stuff happen?
Well,
if God perfectly wise, why bad stuff happen?
When it comes to natural evils, bad stuff happens. Because this is the greatest number of natural possible phenomena with the fewest amount of governing principles. A different philosopher who is kind of contemporary to Leibniz, a little bit later, whose first name I don't remember, but his last name is Spinoza, he says somewhere in some of his stuff that a thing is not more or less good based on if it offends you. I think Leibniz would probably get excited if he heard that and say, yes, earthquakes are not more or less good just because they're scary and dangerous to you. Moreover, if we take the story from Genesis very seriously, and I think we should, that there was a time when humanity had access to the tree of life and was not going to die. Are earthquakes a bad thing if they're not going to kill you? Is it a bad thing that there are tornadoes and forest fires and flies that lay their eggs in things? Are those bad things if they're not going to kill you?
Well,
not necessarily. You might not like them, but that doesn't make them bad.
Let me ask you a question. What is bad, Socrates? What is evil, Socrates?
Evil, according to Blessed Saint Augustine, is a privation of the good.
So, something you can draw out of that is evil presupposes good by nature.
Yeah. Evil does not exist in and of itself.
Yeah, it is not a self-existing thing. It is dependent on the pre-existence of good.
Yeah, Augustine, before he becomes a Christian, was part of a group called the Manichaeans.
We don't like them.
No, they were kind of Gnostic,
heretics,
heretical, kind of Christian adjacent, but not really. And
they were a cult.
Yeah, they had this cosmology where the good and the evil were equal forces that were fighting each other for all eternity, trying to overcome one another. And Augustine thinks about this a lot, and he ends up determining through big brain reasoning that this really can't be.
Yeah.
Because if the good stopped, if the good just stopped resisting the evil still wouldn't be able to overcome the good. Because it can't.
Yeah.
So then he was like, well, this dualism thing doesn't make any sense. And he thought about how perfections are goods. Okay? It is good to be wise. It's even better to be perfectly wise.
Sure.
It's good to, I don't know, be smooth. It's even better to be perfectly smooth, or whatever. We can go down a list of things that are good. And it's better to be perfectly whatever the good thing is.
Yeah.
And one of the good things, a good thing, according to Augustine, would be like completeness or wholeness. So if we had something that was evil and it became 100% evil, it would be completely or wholly evil, which for Augustine would make it good. So it would go so evil that it ends up looping back down into having a good quality, which is nonsense. So you can't have complete evil. It can only be mostly evil. There has to be something about the thing that is good, or else it can't be. I know that's a lot. And not immediately relevant to Leibniz.
That's an interesting take, though.
It is interesting. Yeah.
So,
You want to talk about Voltaire now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think we need to go down that rabbit hole right now.
Yeah, there are a lot of rabbit holes that we could go down, but we're not. Somehow, even though we're about to do 3 hours of this, we don't have enough time to explore all the rabbit holes.
No, and we never will.
Yeah. Anyway, a couple years after Leibniz does his thing, we get Voltaire, who you might have heard of. People like Voltaire. I do not. He's lame. Anyway, Voltaire writes a book called Candide that is supposed to be a response to Leibniz's Best of All Possible Worlds. And in Candide, our main character, whose name is Candide, has terrible, awful, bad things happen to him for about 120 pages. His teacher and best friend is framed for murder and gets hung to death, and another good friend of his gets syphilis and dies, and then his girlfriend is captured and serially raped, and then he gets shipwrecked, and so on and so forth. But the whole time, Candide is going, well, this must be the best of all possible worlds.
Yeah.
Because that's what my teacher told me. And Voltaire is making fun of Leibniz, and he's saying, oh, the best of all possible worlds? Haven't you heard? Bad things happen, Leibniz.
Yeah.
Most of the things that Voltaire has happen in the book Candide are moral evils. Very few are natural evils, with the exception maybe of syphilis.
Yeah.
Which is not what Leibniz is talking about. He's talking about natural evils.
Mm-hmm.
But Voltaire either doesn't realize this or chooses to ignore it.
Yeah.
And he either is unaware or chooses to ignore that Leibniz says a miserable life may end miserably.
Yeah.
He doesn't think that it being the best of all possible worlds means that everyone gets a happy ending. Only that the world is created by a good God and governed by good governing principles that make a lot of things possible. And that lots of things being possible is a good, at a very high good.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a beautiful thing that we should appreciate and enjoy. And Voltaire is like, nuh-uh, because sometimes people get murdered. Yeah. Yeah. Voltaire was the OG Reddit mod.
Oof.
Yeah, he was tipping his fedora to miladies and getting chicken tendies to dip in honey mussy sauce, as it were.
I don't like that.
I don't like Voltaire.
I don't like that at all.
I don't like Voltaire at all. So that's Voltaire's response to Leibniz, and I don't think it's a very good response, in part because it doesn't actually address the argument.
Mm-hmm.
People get infatuated with Candide, and they think that it is a good reply to Leibniz's Best of All Possible Worlds.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think it is. I don't think it addresses what Leibniz is saying. The first time we recorded this, you pushed back on Leibniz and basically said, well, why does it have to be these governing principles?
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't God make it with different governing principles that would have less suffering?
Yeah.
Which is a better response to Leibniz, in my opinion.
Wow, I'm bigger brained than somebody.
Yeah, you're smarter than Voltaire, which is not hard to do, but you've done it.
Yeah, I mean, we can go down that hole for a minute, maybe then.
Yeah, how much time do we have for?
We've got like 15-ish minutes.
Let's go down that hole.
Yeah.
Why couldn't God make the world with the same phenomena, but with even better governing principles that would...
Why couldn't God make the world in such a way where gravity still exists, but gravity behaves in such a way that earthquakes aren't possible? Why did God create wind in such a way where tornadoes just couldn't happen? What's up with that?
What's wrong with tornadoes?
Sometimes they kill people or hurt people or destroy their property.
Did God make people killable and with property to be destroyed at first?
You know, there's a fun little argument some individuals will make that perhaps, I'm not saying I believe this, but some people believe this, perhaps the tree of life that we may have gotten to partake in doesn't necessarily make you immortal, so to speak, right? Not that you can't die. It's that it I know, and this sounds super weird, and this gets into like weird conspiracy theory territory almost, but it almost acts like a no aging pill. Or as long as you eat the fruit, you don't age. You won't die of natural old age, that kind of thing. Your body won't fail you. But does that necessarily mean you can't die? Does that mean if you jump off of a cliff, all of your bones won't break? And that those broken bones won't kill you? Right? Could Adam and Eve have jumped off of a cliff and lived? And again, I'm not saying I necessarily believe this. I don't know. But perhaps you could still die. Perhaps a tornado could have killed us.
If we stick to the content of the text.
Yes.
Which I think we would be well advised to do. And Fountain of Youth theory, Tree of Life, is not unsupported, but there's not textual evidence for that position. So I would say nah. Would say nah on that. But I would affirm that within the text, it seems to be that humans were created with conditional immortality, provided that they have access to the tree of life.
Yeah.
God doesn't have to do anything to the humans to make them capable of death other than keep them from the tree of life.
Yeah.
God says to God's self in Genesis chapter 3, I believe it is, we must not let them eat of the tree of life, lest they become like us and never die.
Yeah.
They have conditional immortality. So, provided that the conditions were met and they had access to the tree of life, I don't think a tornado would have killed them. I think that they could have perhaps jumped off of a cliff and been maybe not fine. I don't think that pain, if you talk to the real fundamentalist types, they'll be like, oh, pain didn't exist before the fall. I don't think that's true. I think pain did exist before the fall. I would even go so far as to say that animal death probably existed prior to the fall, because again, conditional immortality.
Eat the tree.
Eat of the tree, and unless you have like some yellow jackets or tapirs or something eating the fruit that have fallen down on the ground, the critters are going to get killed.
So I'm going to go as far as
Lions
to say...
were eating zebras in Eden, I think.
I'm going to go as far as to say that I think it is textually supported that pain certainly existed in the garden pre-fall. And And where I'm getting this is during the fall, or rather, right thereafter, God says to the woman, I, as your punishment, shall multiply your childbearing pains.
Yeah.
Multiply, implying it was already more than 0.
Yeah,
because 0 times 2 is still 0.
Yeah.
I think the text just there plainly lays it out. Childbearing pains exist. Therefore, pain is possible pre-fall.
I'm going to read a little chunk from Genesis because we're talking about it. And
Yeah.
Therefore, it would behoove us to have the text fresh in our mind.
Yeah.
So this is chapter 3, starting at verse 1. Now the serpent was more crafty than any other wild animal that the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, Did God say to you, You shall not eat from any tree in the garden? The woman said to the serpent, We may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden. But God said, You shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the garden, nor shall you touch it, or you shall die. But the serpent said to the woman, You will not die, for God knows that when you eat it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate, and she also gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together, and made loincloths for themselves. So going back to Spinoza, a thing is not more or less good based on if it offends you. Adam and Eve are created in the garden, and God says it is good.
Uh-huh.
And their state that is good is one of nakedness.
Uh-huh.
They eat of the tree, and their nakedness becomes offensive to them.
Uh-huh.
The eating of the tree doesn't create things that we natural and moral evils. The eating of the fruit, which is itself an exercise of a moral evil, opens their eyes to the things that we now call natural evils. I think.
And
I don't know if I'd take a Nerf bullet for that perspective. Like, if you find that terribly offensive and awful and bad and think I'm a heretic, shoot us an email at theology-ish@gmail.com, and I will gladly recant if you can show to me where I've gone wrong in my thinking. But it seems to be the case that natural evils may have just been part of creation, and God said it is good, and we just don't like it because it's scary and hurts.
yeah, and this is something the first time we recorded this episode that I initially had brought up.
Yeah.
Is you do look at the text and you say, well, they didn't know they were naked until they ate the fruit. And pre-knowledge of nakedness, they didn't mind. And God certainly didn't view that as an evil, a sin.
Yeah, it's chill.
Because otherwise he would have just made them in a way where they wore clothes.
Chill nakedness.
But he didn't do that. So perhaps nakedness, among other natural evils, aren't evils at all. Rather, it is that our perspective was so radically shifted that we cannot view it as anything but that because it offends us.
Yeah. I think that pre-fall, pre-lapsarian Eden, Adam and Eve had a rightly ordered connection with God.
Yeah.
That was real good. And because they had that rightly ordered connection with God, they could see things for how they really are. They could see the lion eating the zebra and go, yep, it's working. The machine of Earth is working how it's supposed to. This is good.
Yeah.
And then they eat the fruit and they're like, oh no, the zebra's getting eaten. Ah.
Oh no, Adam, I can see your wiener.
Ah. The rain is happening and it sucks because now I'm wet. Ah. I know this isn't a super popular way to read Genesis chapter 3. Usually if you talk to fundamentalist Christian types, Protestant type people who read Genesis seriously and even literally, they will say that there was no suffering or death prior to the fall. But I don't know that the text necessitates no animal death. I don't know that the text necessitates no pain. Like, if Adam hit his thumb with a rock, that would hurt. If he doesn't have pain before the fall, his machine's not working. People that don't have pain
have a
disease that's real, real bad and real, real fatal.
Yeah, and as we've laid out, childbearing pains, I think, textually already for sure existed.
For it to increase, it's got to be more than none.
0 times 2 is still 0. So, as far as I'm concerned, pain definitely for sure existed. Death, there's a little that's a little more ambiguous as far as like maybe animal death. I don't know. But pain for sure, I think the text is pretty clear about.
This first became a thought process of mine when I was first in college and I took an ecology class. And I learned that in Yellowstone, they didn't have any wolves. There were deer, and there were buffalo, and there were elk.
Yeah.
But no wolves, because they had been hunted out. And there were some bear, but not enough to keep the population of deer and buffalo in check. And there was a lot of overgrazing going on. And the overgrazing made erosion really bad in Yellowstone.
Yeah.
And it changed the shape of rivers. They instead of being like serpentine winding through the landscape,
as they should be,
they became straight line rivers. And that made the average temperature of the water colder, which had bad impacts on the fish populations, which had bad impacts on the bear population, which in turn had bad impacts on the deer and the buffalo. And like,
it was a whole thing.
It was a whole thing that the ecosystem, to be balanced and to do what it needs to do and to function well, there had to be predation.
Yeah.
So they reintroduced the wolves, and it fixed all of that. It fixed the temperature of the river back to what it was supposed to be. It fixed the fish populations. It fixed the bear. It stabilized everything. So, I don't know. I don't know. Did God make things initially in such a way where you didn't need wolves to eat stuff? Maybe, but like he would have had to reshuffle a lot of things once the wolves started to meet to make it.
Because think about it like this.
I don't know.
Just today, some individuals will make the argument that overpopulation's a problem on Earth today. We've got too many people and not enough food to go around for all the mouths. We've got too many people and not enough clean water to go around for all those mouths. We've got too many people and we're starting to run out of space. If that's how it is now, how much worse would it be if not only people couldn't die, but animals couldn't die? How much worse would it be if all the wolves and bears and dogs and frogs and giraffes were repopulating? But they're not even repopulating. They're just populating. They're just populating, and their numbers are only ever going up. Where the heck are all of them going to go?
Yeah,
the population issue would be this times a million.
And I think the fundamentalist, who's very fundamentalist, would simply respond, well, Adam and Eve they sinned pretty quick, so that never got to be a problem.
But we don't know that. The text doesn't tell you that.
Yeah, and
it could have been 3 days, it could have been 3 million years for all we know.
I'm personally totally cool with pre-lapsarian animal death.
Yeah.
Especially like when it comes to insects. The life cycle of a fruit fly is like 7 days.
Yeah.
I'm not saying God couldn't.
Dragonflies live like 2 weeks.
As an adult dragonfly.
Yeah.
They live like 4 years in the larval state.
Yeah.
You know doodlebugs?
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 Brother, I'm an exterminator, and I've never heard the term doodlebug.
They're technically called antlions. So
I don't know
if you
that
ever
I've
walk
heard of
into
that
like,
either.
a barn or something with like a dusty floor, you'll see these little funnels in the dirt,
Uh-huh.
and those are colloquially called doodlebugs, or
Georgia's weird.
also called antlions. And it's like a nursery rhyme thing to take like a stick and you run the stick around the rim of the funnel. You say, doodlebug, doodlebug, your house is on fire. And it just as like a little thing to do. And you'll see it start flicking around down there because it thinks something's falling into its funnel. Those are dragonfly larvae. And
Georgia's wild.
ants will fall into that little funnel and they'll get stuck, and the dragonfly larva will come up and eat it like a sandworm from Dune. And
Those things are hideous.
they're hideous,
Those are disgusting.
which has nothing to do with Leibniz. Except insofar as it's a natural phenomena with a few number of governing principles.
Man, those things are ugly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what dragonfly larva.
That
That becomes a dragonfly, and they stay in that state for several years.
gross.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Anyway,
Yeah.
insects, they have a very short life cycle, a lot of them, and will just be laid as an egg, hatch, mature, make more of themselves, and die in like 48 hours. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, well, I'm not saying God couldn't have made immortal fruit flies pre-fall and then changed once the fall happened. He was like, oh, let's change their DNA to make them have a 48-hour life cycle. It's not that he couldn't do that.
but did he?
I don't know.
I'm not convinced.
I don't know.
That's all I'll say about that. Yeah, I don't know. This
I don't either, but there you go. That's natural evils and a response to it. Leibniz's response, at least, and our attempt at engaging with what Scripture says. I think that natural evils are not that. They simply are, and through the fall, our perception of them has become disfavorable, but they're not more or less good based on if they offend you, according to not Leibniz, Spinoza, and I think Spinoza is on to something.
and he makes a mean pizza.
There's a cookie company called Leibniz. And my philosophy professor, when we had our unit where we did Leibniz, he brought us Leibniz cookies.
Nice.
Thanks, Dr. Miller. They were very good. They're like shortbread. And I'm a big fan of shortbread cookies.
Me too.
Yeah. They're kind of a boring cookie. It's just
They're
like
so
a butter
good.
cookie, but it's good. What's not to like? You put butter and sugar and some flour and maybe a little bit of leavening and like a quarter teaspoon of salt in a bowl, and you let it chill, and then you cook it, and then you got a cookie. It is great.
And there's your weekly cookie cookie recipe from William.
I think that's how you make shortbread.
Oh,
I don't actually know.
well, there you have it.
Is that an hour?
That is.
Okay, well,
Take 5.
take 5, and when we get back, for us, it's going to be like 5 minutes. For you, it's going to be a week. But when we get back, we're going to talk about free will and how that relates to the problem of evil and moral evils, because we just addressed natural evils, kind of, for the past hour.
Yeah.
We tried. Again, amateurs.
There you go.
Okay, yeah, take 5. There you have it. That is the end of episode 1 on the problem of evil. We hope that you will join us again next week for part 2. That will be about free will and how that plays into addressing moral evils, because today we looked at natural evils. Next time it'll be moral evils. If you have any questions or comments for us, don't hesitate to send us an email at theology-ish@gmail.com. There is not a hyphen in the email, but there is one in the show name. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Share us with a friend and help other people find us. Thanks for listening.